الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. اللهم اجعلنا منهم ومن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. آمين يا رب العالمين. أما بعد, السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. And to the rest of our guests here, a very good evening. What I'm going to be talking about, and I'd like to actually turn it into more of a conversation than a lecture, is the concept of science in the Quran, but that is sort of abrupt as a topic because it needs a context. So I'm going to try to present that context first, and then we'll go into some examples of science in the Quran. The Quran in Muslim belief is two things in one. It's a divine message, but at the same time it's also a miracle. It's considered a miracle. And when we talk about the word miracle, I mean the divine message part I think everybody understands. Any people that adhere to a religion or a way of life hold certain words to be scripture or to be holy, and this is the case with the Muslims with the Quran. But it's just important to understand our concept of the word miracle before we go any further, because it is a very specific definition that Islam gives to the word that is not applicable in common language. So even though I'm using the word miracle, it's not necessarily what you would think of usually. Now I want you to think, where do you use the word miracle? You want me to stop already? Okay, they want me to hold on and come back, but I don't want to waste time, so what I'll do is I'll talk to you about some things, and when other people come in, I'll start over and I'll quiz you on what I talked about. Okay? This makes our good use of our time. So you signal me and I'll restart. No problem. Okay? Inshallah. So, in common language, nowadays, where do you use the word miracle? You're watching TV. Who would use the word miracle? Doctors? Do you use the word miracle? Yeah, sports, definitely. The shot clock's running down, somebody takes a chuck at it from the half court and it goes in and everybody screams. It's a miracle, right? Basically, also, you call your friends after you really tank the exam, and then the day of the grades, you go into class and you got a 97, and you say, this is a miracle. Right? Miracles, basically, what people think of when they think of the word miracle is something really good and unexpected that happens to you or someone else is a miracle. Somebody's healed, right? Or something really great happens, something very unexpected, highly unlikely, but not impossible. It's highly unlikely, but not impossible. And that's the general connotation of the word miracle in language. But it also has a spiritual sense among religions in general. And in the spiritual sense, it has nothing to do with experiencing something or something that can be proven. It rather has to do with something you feel in your heart. So you can speak to someone of a particular faith and they can say, well, I believe that such and such religion is a miracle because I felt that miracle in my heart. I feel it, and I can't give you that feeling. You'd have to feel it for yourself. Right? So it's basically, when we use the word in a spiritual sense, what you're actually saying is it's not something provable at all. It's not something that can be gauged in scientific terms. It's a personal experience, really. Right? So that's the second. And thirdly, I want to say something a bit controversial. The word miracle is irrelevant in the context of science. It's irrelevant. Why? Because the scientific community in general, whenever they study a phenomenon, what is their attempt? Are they trying to figure out if this is a miracle, or is there a scientific explanation behind it? What's their attempt always? To find a scientific explanation. So scientifically speaking, there's no such thing as a miracle. It has to have some sort of explanation. If you believe in miracles, then you're not truly a scientist. That's the new way of thinking. That's modern thought, right? Miracles are a religious thing or common language thing, but they're certainly not a scientific thing. It's not a scientific thing. And wherever science has no answer, basically what it says is we haven't figured this out yet, but we're sure there is an explanation. But it's an unwillingness to take the leap of faith, is what is termed usually, like the leap of faith. So for example, in the scientific community, you may have a belief in the Big Bang. Okay, and there may be a consensus about it. But when it comes to the question of what caused the Big Bang, an average scientist will tell you, science can't answer that question, philosophy can, or religion can. We can't, until we have better knowledge, that's not a question, it's not a scientific question. And if you were paying attention to the debate early last year, particularly in some of the northeastern states in the education system, there was a big debate between the teaching of evolution versus intelligent design. Do you remember this debate? It was a pretty popular debate. And essentially the argument on the scientific community's end was that you can't teach evolution, or rather intelligent design, for one simple reason. And what was their reason? Anyone know? No, it's not just that it's not proof. It's a religious thought. It's a philosophical idea. It's not something that can be gauged with the five senses. Again, this is something you learned in like 3rd grade. How do you come to scientific conclusions? What do you use? Yeah, the scientific method, which involves basically the five senses. And when you're talking about miracle, you're definitely asking people to go beyond or believe something beyond the five senses, right? So it seems like science and religion, at some point in time, they collide, and there doesn't seem to be any reconciliation. Either you're religious or you're scientific. And when there is, but on the other hand, there is this weird phenomenon that we're finding more and more of nowadays. There are people that are scientists, but they're very religious. Right? You've got a very religious doctor. A doctor is a sort of a scientist, or a physicist, right? But they may or may not necessarily try to merge the two things. Meaning they put their religion aside when they study science, and they put their science aside when they read Revelation or listen to a sermon or pray or whatever. That's a personal spiritual thing, and science is sort of like an intellectual thing. And you can't really reconcile them. Even people that are religious and scientific, many of them have this problem, right? So it's something that can't be reconciled. At least that's what it seems. But the term miracle in Islam, it has a very different connotation. By the way, before I go to miracle in Islam, I'll tell you some funny cases of miracles, or the word miracle being used in the news. There was a lady, I think it was 4 years ago, some homeless lady. She found a slice of bread under a bridge in Chicago, and it looked like Jesus. And she called it a miracle, and she sold it on eBay for a few thousand, right? Because it was a miracle slice of bread.